to Of the Publishing Persuasion, our wonderful guests. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Angela Montoya, author of Sinner's Isle, along with this ho 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 Merry Christmas queen, Melanie Schubert, with her little koala Santa earrings on.
Aren't they cute?
They are cute, except I recently heard a koala make a sound, and they are rather horrifying.
They don't, I was gonna say they don't talk much.
That would be even
They
scarier.
don't talk much, but when they make sounds, yeah, it's not like a cute little like cat sound or something. It's like, oh.
That's exactly what it sounded like. And I had to keep re-listening it like, no, somebody's making, like, somebody did this. Somebody's make a lie. This is a lie. But that's what koalas really sound like.
Yeah. It's probably because they're constantly drunk on eucalyptus oil. Because they only eat eucalyptus leaves, and so they're constantly like drunk / high.
They're just, ugh.
Yeah.
Feels right. It
It
feels
feels
very
so
Australian.
right.
It's very, very Australian.
Yeah, I forget how different our creatures are compared to other places, but they are like quite shockingly different to the general flora and fauna everywhere else.
Yes. And that's what makes, the world just a beautiful place. Even our animals are diverse.
It's true. It's true. I was trying to think of a good segue, but I can't think of any. I was going to say, speaking of cool, speaking of very cool, unique things, I had something glorious in my inbox today, and I could not wait. I could not wait. And so I just loaded it into I was like waking up in bed and I saw it and I was like, so I loaded it onto my Lagear app and then just listened to it, the book reader thing. So I was just
Nice.
listening to it as I was waking up. Now, let me tell you, Angela Montoya, let me have some firm words with you about how obsessed I am with your new book. And I just cannot tell you, like, friendship aside, how much I fucking love it, how much you have grown as a writer, how much you have nailed the voice. I am so deeply invested in these characters already. Like, they feel so real and so fleshed out. And I was like internally so I was laying there listening to it. And then at a point I was like, and I started reading along with the app because I was just too invested. I am so, yes, really. And as you know, I am a very fussy reader, and it takes a lot to grab my attention like that in the first 20 pages. Like, I'm not even bullshitting you, my friend. Like, you have fucking nailed it. And I'm so proud. And I'm so honored to read the early version. And yeah, like, I don't know if this was draft race stuff, but damn, girl, damn. The other thing that I'm so impressed with is the voice. It manages to do something that Disney does, which is I read it and I go, this voice could excite anyone. You know, when you watch something like a really properly good Disney, somebody who's 5 could love it and somebody who's 50 could love it, and it would hit something in them all. So all I need to know is, when do I get the rest? Like, I'm not even bullshitting you. I had to save my reaction for the podcast. I am so thoroughly invested in this. And damn, girl, damn, you did not come to play. You came to be just lay it down. You just laid it out and you were like, I'm so
Really?
really, really, I am not even sugarcoating it. The last time like a fantasy book had me like that is like, you're talking like the Laini Taylors, you're talking like the Stephanie Garbers, like you're It's good, my friend. It's really fucking good. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I'm so proud. I just like, I felt emotional reading it because I was like, she's a writer. She's a
Oh,
writer. And which I always knew, but it's as I knew, it's an honor to read another Montoya.
well, shit.
I really love it.
Thank you. It's always so scary, like
Yeah.
sharing, even with like a trusted person that you know is gonna take care of your baby. But like, um, it's
Oh, they're
it
not
feels
your babies anymore. They're my babies after reading it.
yours. They're all yours. Well, it's like, and it's been weird because it's the second book.
Mm,
So it's like you're trying to step up your game and but I've learned so much through like pitch
mm,
wars, through edits, and so I like learned, I guess, what works for me and what doesn't. And I was nervous that I was going to be boring
no.
this first little bit. So
The other thing I noticed straight away is it can take just my brain sometimes has a hard time picturing early chapters of books. It takes me a while to get into it, but I have such vivid scenes in my head from your book already. And that's how I knew that. I mean, there was so many little moments where I was just like holding my breath, like for the characters and little clever things you did that I felt was coming. No spoilers. I felt was coming. Oh, like you hinted at it so well, but still, when I was like confirmed, I was like, so beautifully set up, so beautifully written,
wow. Well,
and
damn.
yeah,
Now my head is feeling big right
good.
now.
It should. It should. And literally the only because I've listened to it on thing, I didn't write you notes. I found because I was listening to, I've got a few typos. I'll
Oh,
dig
good.
it off for you, but that was it. That's honestly all.
Wow.
Yeah. I
And
was
just a few typos because I'm sure I had plenty.
There wasn't that many that like list obviously I was only listening to it for the first half until I got like started to read it. So, but those ones just, I feel like now after doing Sloan, I'm like, when you spot those typos, just get them because otherwise you can miss them later, like
Yeah.
that's literally the only thing other than just wanting to have the rest of the book to read. Like it's just glorious.
Well, thank you. That it really like boosts my confidence a little, just to know that it brought you where I was hoping, just to bring you into the story. So
Yes.
thank you for reading it.
Of
Just
course.
thank you for reading it, first of all.
I'm honored to read it. And yeah, I'm so excited to see where the rest of it goes. And yeah,
Yay! Woo! Thank you. Honestly, thank you for the boost, like, because I was not sure
yeah,
if I was on the right path or what I need to do. So this is the boost I needed to keep going through revisions
yeah.
and finish it up.
And the other thing I'm so impressed with is how fucking clean it is. Like it's really it's a very clean draft. Like those few typos were really the only thing. And then because the voice will read it and then I'll check. I'm like, oh yeah, it is a typo. But aside from that, there's no it does not read like, you know, the kind of early stuff we would both know we would write. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yes. And I
it
really
really
feel like doing the fast draft race that we did, like it ripped apart all of these like
mm,
blockages of, I got to write this perfect thing and just let me just write
yeah,
how I felt like the characters would interact or be. And having that, like, I have to just write, like, don't look back.
yeah,
It really helped and it really shaped this whole book. So, and I think that same thing for you too. I
yeah.
mean, because it just feels clean.
Thank you. I just think that fast draft is the way to go for me. And I don't know why I even resisted it for so long because I naturally want to write something in one go, kind of, instead of just like plucking away a bit. But I think sometimes you kind of hear people saying like they worked on books for years and years and years, and then you're like, did I do something wrong by drafting like soul swapped in a couple months or whatever? But I don't think that's the case. And I think like I read this an agent posted a thread the other day about like fast drafting just being like a muscle that you can train to like just go and like, and I'm starting to understand that like if we lean into this can be a thing. And that's not to say you're not going to reach like writer's block moments or whatever, but I am finding that it is a muscle that I'm developing. And even on like the other day, I was just like, I don't feel like, like I went from being like, this is the best that you, and then you have the next day. And like you come off that high, and I was like, why did I even think this was a good idea? Like nobody's gonna want to read this. I had my little emo moment, and I don't know why. It's like that, right? Don't you have those days? You're like, some days you're the shit, and some days you're shit.
Yes, always. And hourly it'll change sometimes. I
Right?
don't know why our brains are such jerks, but they really are sometimes.
Maybe
So
the
that's why you have
balance
to
is
have good
good.
friends like this to bounce ideas and boost each other, because I could have just been stuck spiraling all day.
You
So
have nothing to spiral about. Turn that spiraling up, because it's really beautiful. And fast drafting for the win, apparently. Who knew?
for us it works. For us it works. Obviously not for everybody. Like we talked to Nikki Payne, and she has her way of doing this. And it wouldn't, I can't do Scrivener. Melanie can't do Scrivener, but Nikki Payne swears by Scrivener, and obviously it freaking works for her. So everybody's got their thing, but for us it seems to be like do the rough outline and then fast draft that bitch. And then go.
And then we break our brains over it later, trying to edit it to fit like other things, But like the actual heart of the story, I think when I try too hard to like sit down and map it out, like really, really carefully, I just wind up losing it and losing the joy. And then I think if you're working on a project like that, it's agony.
Mm-hmm.
The other random thing that I was like, there's no segue into this. I just can't stop thinking about it. So the last couple of weeks, I was like, there's just some movies that everyone talks about, and you're like, I guess I should watch it. It's like a cult classic. It's apparently one of the most sexiest films of all time. So there was two. Finally watched 50 Shades of Grey, and finally watched The Secretary. Have you seen these films?
I've seen 50 Shades, but I don't know if I've seen The Secretary.
Yeah,
but I've seen 50
want
Shades.
to waste your time. It was very odd. It was very odd. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, how did you feel about 50 Shades?
I felt like I was laughing at everything. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't take it seriously, and I just felt like, is it sexy? Like everything else aside, like whatever you're into, that aside, but the actual movie itself, I was just like,
yeah. There was no chemistry between the actors. I don't think they even really got along in real life.
No, I just like, I felt more heat in Titanic when they had this like random censored sex scene in the car.
Yes. You know what we should have watched instead, and probably would have had a lot of chemistry, is the Twilight
Porno.
Yeah.
It's okay, I'll mark our episodes as explicit. We can say porno.
the sexy
I
Twilight.
I did watch it. I did, and I would say it was much sexier. Honestly, though, it wasn't very good. It wasn't the acting. I would say the acting was probably better than the original Twilight, but the sexy time parts, I was like, oh, it left me a bit dry.
Oh.
Pun intended, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I started like listening randomly a podcast, and it's done by Allison from Twilight. Isn't
Really?
that her name? Yeah, and it's about like she's basically interviewing the old cast.
What?
And do you want to know? I feel very redeemed. In
Yeah.
the first episode, like, because they're rewatching, she's rewatching it now as like a grown woman.
Yeah.
And she was like, do you know who I find the hottest? Carlisle. Carlisle.
Her daddy.
Her dad. Yeah, she was like, maybe there's something wrong with me. But she was like, he's a doctor. He's got a job. He's a family
That's
man.
what she said. She stole that from our episode of the podcast because that's
I,
literally what you said.
yeah, I think she might be listening in.
You must be listening. It's clear to me now.
Yeah,
But
but what a random podcast to stumble upon. Honestly, I was looking for like moody music, and then it popped up on my thing, and I was like, okay. And so now I'm hooked on this Twilight. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure it's just called Twilight or something. But it's a fun podcast.
that was the other thing, like in the very best way, and like way, obviously, way better than Twilight. There are Twilighty vibes to your new book, and it is glorious to me. It is glorious to behold. So you keep listening to all the podcasts and all the, because it's going to be rebirthed in a much. I mean, let's be honest, those series, they have something. Even we just talked with Jenny, and she was saying how I never read the books. I found the writing a little bit too purple prosy for me. Is that how you say
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And I find that writing kind of hard to like really get into, but I've watched this series, the
I mean,
movies more times than I care to admit, and I still enjoy it. I know that it's not
yes.
perfect, but I usually go Hunger Games. I'll have like a binge of like old favorite things. I'll be like Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, when I need a good YA
Yeah.
cleanse through my
Well,
body.
that was such a like a fun time. It felt like when all those books and series were coming out. And I don't know about for you guys, but we had like midnight premieres where we would go. Oh, it was so fun. And for me, it was all memories with my baby sister. She got me into reading YA because she was a teenager at the time.
Ooh.
And we bonded over these books. And then so she and I would go to these midnight premieres, and people would dress up and like cheer and scream whenever Jacob or Edward would come out. And it was just like this really fun.
You went to like the live event, like they were actually there.
No, it was just fans that were just
Oh, I love that.
excited. Yeah, and it was just like this really fun time. Whenever the movies came out, everybody showed up for these premieres, and like at midnight, and we'd all like cram into the theater and scream. And so I think Twilight will always just be one of those
I think so.
special for everybody. I think we all needed a little Twilight at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's probably one of those things that like there's definitely like I definitely find myself laughing at certain
Oh yeah.
things now because the angst, there's just so many memes now about it all. Like you just find yourself laughing at like the intensity of it.
Oh yeah. It's so bad, so good. Yeah, and like you do all the memes. Anytime Edward like sparkles, I think of like
Right.
the sparkle troll from Trolls the movie, and he's like, this cute troll, and he's all sparkle, and he's like, "Is this the face of a killer, Bella?" And but that's another. I mean, books are just special, and there's these random little books that we read that really just like stick to us forever.
I love
And
those memories that you have of that. That's like
yeah,
precious. And I think like everybody, it's even like some of those older films that like are still cult classics even now, even though
yes,
people like, I think of like Labyrinth, which I rewatched the other day, and I was like, there's so many like wanky little things about it, but there's no doubt that David Bowie is a star. When he comes on screen, I'm just
oh,
like, you are glorious, right? And there was way too much bulge in those tights for a children's show. That was not for the children.
That was for the moms and dads. That was
Right?
for us adults.
That was
Although
for us adults, just a little treasure for us.
a big treasure.
A
A big
big
treasure.
treasure.
But
I
so
love
many, there's so many kids shows and movies that you watch back and you're like, this is not appropriate. Like,
it,
what?
right? I feel like they got away with way more when we were kids. Like
Yeah,
a lot of that stuff is, I think
yeah,
now they're a little more careful,
yeah.
which I,
And as a child, you're just like, da, 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 you don't notice.
you
Or
don't
maybe you do. Maybe you do when things change for you. And
Can you please watch the Twilight porno for me and report back? I feel like how have you not watched it? Being the Twilight fangirl that you are,
yeah.
it's
Well, now I'm going to have to. I'm really going to have to. I shall report back. Or you'll never see me again. I don't know.
both are acceptable responses to that question. We should probably read Jenny's bio.
Yes.
Before we forget, I can't believe I actually remembered for once.
I know.
A rare
It's
thing.
the Christmas magic in the air. It's just got you ready. I don't know.
Ready in that tone after the conversation we just had.
Yeah.
Well, the glorious Jenny, who we just had way too much fun chatting with her today.
Jenny is hilarious and she is a firecracker.
Yeah.
She was not playing with us today. She came in hot and I freaking adore her. Her personality is just she's fun.
She's
Yeah.
so fun. And I feel like we've been so lucky with our guests recently. Like I always adore our guests, but especially the last several, it was just like the conversation was just so easy. It was like it's very hard to when you actually stop and think we're meeting these people face to face for the first time, other than, you know, just DMs and like whatever else. It's kind of crazy to think like how effortless those conversations, like Jenny today.
Yeah.
She's just like, she is a yarn spinner. She could yarn with us all day and all night.
Oh yes.
And I lived for it. I knew we'd have fun because, of course, she's such good friends with Courtney. And yeah, but it was even better than I thought, you know?
Yeah. And I love this community because we all have this thing that we bond over.
Yeah.
And you just, there's so many things to talk about. Like we could just go on and on about all these fun things that we really are passionate about. And so we're just blessed and lucky that we've had so many guests. And Jenny, she tops the cake.
Yeah.
And she is our final guest of the year.
He is our final guest of the year.
So, I mean, we went out with a bang, bang, boom.
Yeah, and her journey is so moving as well. Like, it's just a resilience I keep seeing over and over again. And I'm so proud to be part of this community and people like that who are just like on fire for this job. Like, I feel like everyone I know now that I interact with, they're here because the stories won't be quiet. The stories have to be told, and no amount of no is like has stopped like 10-year journey. And like it's quite heartbreaking some of what happened to her, you know, like and that can crush you. But yeah, this community that we have, it's just priceless.
It is. Let's get Jenny on. Let's actually, I guess we should read her bio first.
We should.
Because I just assume everybody knows who the hell we're talking about, as they should. But yeah, let's read the bio. Would you like me to read it this time?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Jenny L. Howe first started scribbling stories into black and white composition notebooks with neon pink pens when she was in junior high and never really stopped. In college, she decided to turn her love of books into a career by pursuing a Ph.D. in literature, where she spent the next few years studying bizarre and entertaining medieval romances. I wanted to ask her about that. We didn't get to it. She'll have to come back on because I have to know about what the hell.
Yeah. As soon as
right?
you read it, I was thinking, I wish we asked her about that. That sounds
know.
hilarious.
Well, and I'm sure she has a lot to say about that. We'll definitely have to have her on again. Now, as a professor, she teaches courses in college writing, literature, and children's media. When she's not writing and teaching, Jenny spends her time buried under puzzle pieces, cross-stitching her favorite characters, and taking too many pictures of her rescue dogs, Tucker and Dale. The Makeup Test is her debut novel.
Yeah. Let's get her on. I like this little off-the-shoulder number. Brrr.
Trying to be sexy today for you.
I was going for sexy elf for you. This is actually like one big Christmas present, this outfit. It's all little presents.
Oh, it is. That's cute. Hello, Jenny.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness. Can you see me okay? There's enough of me.
Oh, yes.
Perfect.
We see you. We see you. You look great.
Shelves. Is that No Face on your shelves?
Is what on my shelf?
The little figurines. They look like the anime character No Face.
Oh no, they're all like Marvel stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you.
Are you a big Marvel? Are you a Marvel fan? A super?
My husband is, so by association, I have had to be. I feel one of those things that keeps your marriage together.
I love it. We all do whatever we must.
Absolutely. I've gotten him into all sorts of weird stuff, so this is payback. The true romance, right?
It is. And sometimes it really pays off. Like, I got my husband into anime, and now I'll be like, because he gets big breaks at work because he's a truckie, so sometimes he just has to wait to get a load. And I'll be like, well, what were you watching today? He's like, oh yeah, I was just like catching up on Bleach. And I was like, motherfucker, watching it without me. Just like a little anime monster.
My favorite is that we made a trade probably like 10 years ago where I'd watch Doctor Who with him, but he had to watch the Vampire Diaries with me. And by the end, he was as like annoyed with the same people as I was.
Yes.
I love that. I love it. I find it's so interesting and funny when they get as excited about these like girly quote unquote shows, right? You just see like slowly leaning in,
absolutely
listening.
Oh, 100%. My husband watches all the like Love is Blind with me, and like I literally feel like I would go nuts watching it without him, because you need someone to be like, I can't believe he just said that. Like
yeah, I've gotten him into Great British Bake Off.
Ooh.
And we were he picked me up from work today, and on the drive home he was telling me that he was watching a TikTok video where like some famous chocolatier was making some kind of croissant, and he just looks at me and he goes, there were so many layers of lamination. And I was like, oh, you sweet man.
That is the stuff of lasting love. There are some inside jokes that nobody else will get because you've watched so much of the same shit together. It's glorious. Well, welcome to the show. We've wanted to have you having me for a while now. So happy to finally have you here.
Thank you.
I know. Yeah, we've been excited. I think we've both been obsessing over you like silently because let's see what you got.
Sorry.
Yes, there it is.
I forgot the important part.
Gotta have it. You have to show the goods.
Absolutely. I normally have a giant billboard, but it's back up in our bedroom. So I was like, I need the goods.
Well, hey, that's one way to keep the romance alive. Just have a giant billboard of your book in the bedroom.
Colin Benjamin just looming over us.
I love it. I love it. I think you could add a little spice.
Right? He's just judging anything that's happening in there.
Hey, but it works.
That's so funny. I love it. I love it. Well, I was saying Melanie and I have been slowly lurking super fans of yours.
Oh,
Because we're mega fans of Courtney K, and I know
sure.
you two
I've
are.
been on this road for a long time, side by side.
I love that. It's so special to have someone like that that's like right there with you,
Absolutely.
going through the ups and downs. And there's many
And
downs.
it's interesting too, because I think we started here and ended up here, right? Like our paths to publication looked very different, but then we got to publication at like the exact same time, like within a month of each other, and then have just been through all of this sort of wild stuff together. So it's like really funny to sort of watch us meet the same place from having like our own separate struggles to get there.
Yeah. Where did
I
you
love
two
it.
meet, since we're on the topic?
Yeah. Well, how did we meet?
Yeah.
On Twitter.
On Twitter.
On Twitter, way back in December of 2015. I don't
Wow.
even remember what I tweeted, but it had something to do with hot chocolate. And she replied with that tweet of Anna and Anna from Frozen inhaling and going chocolate. And that was the start of our friendship.
That sealed the deal right there for you. She understood your soul.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And that was, we ended up starting a little book club with another friend of ours that January, which just kind of cemented our friendship. And we've been like exchanging work and supporting each other ever since. So 7 years now. It's wild.
Oh, I didn't know it was that long. That makes
Yeah.
my heart so happy.
Yeah.
That
Oh.
really is the best, because for us, community is everything.
Absolutely.
And having that writer community like has saved us in so many ways. It's so easy to just kind of give up, but when you have that, especially that core group that really understands your soul,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost impossible to give up, because they're gonna give you shit if you
Absolutely. They will put that boot in your ass. But it also just like writing can be so solitary, right? Like it's for so long, it's just you and those characters in the story. And so having somebody to just turn to and complain or be like, oh crap, I just had this great idea, or whatever the case may be, is so nice. And it's nice to have, like, I've made a lot of new writing friends over the past few years, but Courtney like knows, I think Courtney has read every book I have written, and the makeup test was number 6.
Okay.
So like, Courtney has read, Courtney knows my history.
She has been in
She
the
has
trenches.
been there. Sadly, I feel bad for her. Some of those early ones were not good.
That's so beautiful. Oh,
It
you
really
really
is.
well up. That's really, it's such a like, and you know, that actually comes across in the way you both post about each other, you know, like it makes so much more sense now. And I'm just like, you know, you've watched each other's journeys and come to this point. And
And we've gotten to hang out in person a few times too, even though she lives in California and I live on the East Coast. But I have family not too far from her in California, so whenever we go visit them, like I got to spend the day with her when I was out there in August, and she's come to stay with us for a weekend, and so we've actually got to hang out in person too, which is nice, because I have some friends, like I don't know if you know Annette Christie, who's also an adult writer. I have known Annette since 2016, and we have never met in person. So it's like the like bad thing about making friends on the internet is they could be anywhere, right? Like,
like Australia.
Totally.
right, like Australia, not easy to get to, Melanie.
I
I know. What the hell, Melanie? You need to work on that.
With all of Angela's goats and her sheep and her chickens, how's she gonna get there?
Yeah, it's true.
But when the meeting happens one day, finally, it will be glorious.
Absolutely.
The world will shaketh.
Absolutely.
But I want to hear more about your writing journey, because you said this is your 6th manuscript.
Yes.
So
10 years.
Bring us back. Like,
oh God,
did you always want to be a writer? What got you started?
So, I mean, when I was younger, I was obsessed with writing. And in fact, when I was like 11, 12, 13, 14, so I don't know where we are in terms of age, but I was a huge Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine reader. So like Fear Street and all the like horror novels Christopher Pike used to write. The fact that the like big horror thing on Netflix is one of his books this time around has just been like 13-year-old me is like, oh my God. But I used to write stuff like that. Like I think if 13-year-old me saw this, she would be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What is this? Where is the murder? Where are the monsters? What is going on? But I used to write that kind of stuff. Like I really wanted to be the next R.L. Stine. And I had a little like writing group, and we would like go home and write chapters and then call each other on the phone with three-way calling and read them to each other. And it was like, that was the thing I wanted to do. But then I got to high school and it suddenly became time to think about what did I really want to do with my life. And I didn't know anybody who had ever done anything like this. So writing didn't feel practical. And so I started to sort of shift to what do I want to do with my life, and then get caught up in like the social stuff in high school and sports and all of that. And every time my teachers would give us the option to do something creative, I would always do that. Like my junior year, he had us write our own Inferno. And so like I put all my classmates I hated in hell, and like my father who I was estranged from in hell, and handed that in. like they were people in his class, and he's just writing in the margins, wow, Jenny. But I would always gravitate towards the creative things. And it wasn't until I was in my third year of my PhD program, and I had just finished my comprehensive exams, and my husband and I were going away for the first time in forever. And he's got all his beach books, and I don't even know what I like to read anymore because I've been an English PhD student for 3 years reading medieval lit. And I'm like, you can't bring that to the beach. And so we went to a bookstore and I bought Twilight. And I had no idea what Twilight was at that point, but the cover was cool and it sounded fun. And I just ripped through it and was like, paranormal romance is fascinating. Like the ways in which it can create tension for romance is like really interesting. And I was suddenly like, I want to write my own YA paranormal romance. And so while I wrote my dissertation, I wrote a book. And it took me 5 years to get that book right, because I just kept rewriting the first 100 pages over and over because I didn't have a writing process yet.
Yeah.
And that book is in a very low drawer under lock and key, and no one will ever see it again. Because I made a lot of the mistakes that I think we all make when we start. It was a story that's not really mine to tell. And they were all of like, I wrote the second half of the book before the first half because I was more excited about the second half, and like could never make the front fit, which taught me I have to write chronologically. So I learned something from it. But I started the book and I was 26. And I started querying it when I was 32. Wow. And I queried that thing for 2.5 years. I had something like 175 rejections, never got a full request, because this was as paranormal was dying and dystopia was huge and already starting to die in the YA atmosphere. And so I put it into Pitch Wars in 2015 and said, if it dies there, I'm going to put it aside. And while I was waiting for Pitch Wars, I drafted a YA contemporary. And I finished writing that and like revising it in time for Pitch Wars the next year. I did not get in a shock to no one. I did not get in with that terrible book. But I got in the next year with the YA contemporary.
Wow.
And I got my first agent from that. And then went on sub with that book. I was on sub 1.5 years and it died. It never went anywhere. And while I was on sub, I wrote 2 more books. And my agent and I were realizing that we weren't a good fit anymore. Nothing I was doing was really exciting them. And so we parted ways. And I spent 2 years querying 2 books in the query trenches. I wrote another book that needs to be rewritten. So I count it in my thing, but it's like, I never did anything with it because I knew when I got to the end I had to start over. And so that one, but I've queried everything else. And I was ready to quit. I had been at this so I think at this point I was 39. So I had been querying, had an agent, gone on sub, that all fell apart. And then queried 2 books I really loved and believed in that had no luck. And I was like, maybe I'm done, right? Do I need to keep making myself feel awful going through this? And by the time I queried the second time, it looked so different than it did back in 2016, 2015, right? Like the stats about how many fulls tell you you're doing well, all of those things that they were telling you back in 2014, 2015 did not apply anymore. And like people were starting to get like no responses to fulls, which was not something that was true the first time I queried. Is if you got a full request, you heard back in some way. Yeah. And that is not true anymore because there's just too much stuff coming at agents, and even editors sometimes can't get back to everybody anymore. And so the whole atmosphere had changed, and it's worse now. Like it is like now is just an awful time to query from what I'm hearing. And so I was just like, why am I doing this to myself? But I had this spark of an idea about a grad school romance because I think I needed to write something that was purely just for me. And I had this like nibbling of an idea about a grad school romance. And I spent 10 years in grad school, write what you know, right? And so I said, I'm going to write this book. And if there's something to it, I will query it, but I will only query it if I am okay with nothing ever happening with it. Like my self-worth had been too tied to what happened to these books. And it was just not great for hi puppy. It was just not great for my mental health and for everything else. And so I said I had to change my relationship to all of this if I was going to do this again. So this book just like poured out of me. I think I wrote it in the back end of, so like April, May, June of 2020. So we're all locked in our houses. We're not doing much of anything. And I revised it with the help of 2 friends over the summer. And they were both like, oh my God, you absolutely have to query this. And I knew I needed to query it. Like, when you know.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, there's something in this book. And so I sent out like 15 or 20 queries when it was ready. And one of those queries was to my agent, Caitlin Detweiler, who I have queried on every project I have ever written and queried. Every time. And she always sent the nicest no's. And I was like, this person, I can't let this person go. So every project, and it was funny because she hadn't been able to get back to me on the full of one of my YAs that she had requested. And so I had emailed her and said, hey, I have this new thing. Do you want to look at that instead? And she felt so bad that she hadn't gotten back to me about the other one, that she read the new one within a week of me sending it to her. Nice. And then emailed me and was like, we need to chat. And I just sat on the floor. I am like this human that I have been querying for 10 years wants to talk to me. And I just knew, like, we had a conversation and I was like this, I had a few offers from other lovely agents, but I just knew, like, I was like, this is and I have been thrilled working with Caitlin the whole time. And because the universe felt bad for me, I was only on sub for 3 weeks.
Yay!
I am that asshole, excuse my French, who had that kind of sub experience.
You earned it.
The universe was like, Jenny, we're sorry. And so Caitlin had there was this like perfect storm where Caitlin had already had like a meet and greet call set up with my future editor well before she even signed with me. They were just like, the holidays are too crazy, we'll meet in January. And I signed with her in November. And so when they met in January, an hour before their call, my editor posted to Twitter, manuscript wish list, looking for a romance with a plus size main character who has a happily ever after who has nothing to do with weight. And Caitlin was like, excuse me, do I have the book for you? And so she had just primed Sarah. And so when Sarah got it, she started reading that day.
Wow.
And was already the next week in second reads and had set up a call with me. And a week after the call, an offer came in. So it was like, which still felt like the longest 3 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I know I spent a year and a half the first time. Like, I know what a grueling experience sub is like you are just waiting to hear. And it's a rough experience and different from querying in some ways, because it's like you're at that zenith, right? You're at that point that you're either getting what you want or you're falling off the cliff. Right. And it's like, it's hard. And so I feel like the universe was like, all right, Jenny, you've been through enough. Here you go.
You deserved it.
And here we are. So that in my nutshell was my journey.
You earned it. It was for you. And I love that. I mean, I don't love, because obviously it really probably sucked for you having to deal with all of this, but I really love that you did have to go through all of these struggles, and you know, obviously we all think of giving up sometimes, but you didn't. And the right story came at the right time for the right people, and it just hit.
Yeah.
And it hit because you didn't give up. You
Right.
know?
Now, if past Jenny heard me say this, she'd slap me. But I would not have wanted to debut with any other book, with any other imprint, with any other editor, and with any other agent. Like this was my perfect entrance into publishing, as far as I'm concerned, no matter what happens with my career moving forward.
Yeah.
And Jenny from 10 years ago would shut up, right? Like, that's not true. But it is true. I think that if you keep going, you will get where you're going, right? Like, and I think that for writers who are in it, like, that was the last thing I ever wanted to hear from somebody when I was like in the low points. But it's truly part of the battle is you got to keep throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yes.
Right. That's just the nature of this industry if you're going to do traditional publishing.
Yeah. And I really loved your advice of what you said about when you finally queried this book, that you kind of like detached yourself almost, and you were just like, whatever happens, happens. Whereas previously you'd been like, everything hinges on this moment. Right. And like, it's a part of me. And like, and it's a really, having done both, having queried both ways, it's such a difference to just be like, yeah, I poured 100% of myself into this, and now I'm putting it into the query gods and letting go and writing something else, because otherwise it messes with your head if you just like, this is my one good idea, and it's like, no, bitch, just keep, like you said, throw the spaghetti at the wall, something's going to stick. And it sounds like, like, it does kind of sound like it was meant to be the way it happened for you, like this agent of your dreams finally in the end that you earned through your persistence, and you were ready for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That. And I think too, it's a good reminder that we're more than one story, because I think you can get into that mindset that this, especially if it's something that like you put a lot of yourself into, and that has a lot, reflects you, then all of these rejections feel like rejections of you, not rejections of this product you have created, right? And that's the problem with art sometimes, is there's so much, when you're trying to do art as a business, there's so much like personal and passion tied into something that is very dispassionate. And it is a, you know, we love these things, but it is a product.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to remember that it is one of many products you are going to create, I think just really kind of helps. And I have tried to keep that mentality, although it becomes harder with each step you take. But I've tried to say, if this ends up being my only book deal, I am going to just enjoy every moment of having completed this dream that has been 30 years in the making. Right. Like my book came out when I was 42. And I had been truly working at this since I was 26, but had been dreaming about it since I was 12. right? And so if this is it, right? If the God said, here, Jenny, we have given you your one gift, then I'm just going to enjoy the fact that I got to put 2 books in the world because I have a 2-book deal. And so, and I hope that I will have a long and lasting career, but everything is so uncertain. I think the biggest, like, horrible thing I discovered about publishing as I got into it, I had this idea just because I guess I spent a lot of my formative years reading authors that just had a huge canon, that I thought once you got that first book deal, they just let you keep churning them out until you were done. Yeah. Right. And that you didn't have to keep applying to get a new book deal or performing again. Right. And so when I found out that, like, no, you get whatever deal you get in the first deal, and then you have to go back to acquisitions with your option and do this all over again, I was like, I felt robbed. Like, Stephen King just has 9,000 books, right? Like, and I'm sure at some point they were just like, whatever, Stephen, just give us your next manuscript. But for a long time, he probably had a similar journey. But no one tells that story, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the false story of publishing that you get in the media, which always gets publishing wrong anyway. But, you know, like, that is just not something that I think you ever know if you, because even people I know, once I got a book deal who don't know anything about this, were like, so now you just write books forever? You're quitting your job? I was like, oh, sweet summer child. Absolutely not. Right.
Gotta keep grinding. And I think that's it right there. It's like, you have to know what your ultimate goal is with writing. Like, is it, I want to publish books, I want to be this big star, I want to do these things, or is it, I just want to write?
Right.
And, you know, like, and if I do get published, yes, that's fantastic. So I think everybody has to kind of go into it with what is their goal, and then, you know, that helps with querying and going on submission, because you're like, okay, well, if this doesn't work, I'm still going to keep writing. Because I remember during Pitch Wars, right before the showcase, I had like a meltdown of just like,
what a time to have a meltdown.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
Somebody
Who
had
would ever have a meltdown at that time?
Yeah. But I just had this meltdown of like, what if nothing comes of this? You know, what's going to happen? And my partner was like, does this mean you're done writing? Like, if nothing comes from this book? And I'm like, well, no. And so he was like, well, then shut up and just keep going.
Right.
And it really like slapped me in the face of just like, that's right. I'm just going to keep writing.
Well, and I feel like those moments of like high pressure don't help, right? Like, Pitch Wars it's a wonderful program in a lot of ways. And I met so many people who are still a huge part of my life through Pitch Wars, but the setup put so much pressure on the showcase, right? Because especially I am the Pitch Wars year of Tommy and the giant book deal.
Yeah.
That kind of was like, and I think after our year, there was this sense of like, oh my God, Pitch Wars can like make a writing career. And it's true, it can, right? It can open the right doors for you to get there. But I think it put even more pressure on the showcase for at least the writers, right? Who are, of course, like, yes, I love that it's community. I love that it's all these things, but there's also this showcase, which could change everything, right? And I think too, like, another thing that was very different from me when I started this to me now is when I was in grad school, I was staring down a terrible job market going, I need to get published to get some extra money. You know, I was in grad school, I was making nothing. You know, my husband worked for his family, so we were not Scrooge McDucking in coins, right? Like, we were just getting by, and writing felt like this thing that if it could just happen would fix everything. And that put even more pressure on it, right? Where this time I'm like, I have a full-time teaching job. I have this whole other career that if it takes a while or if it never happens, it is not going to do. I own my home. I have a car, you know, like, we are very settled. So writing money is a plus, not a thing that needs to happen to make life okay. And I think that was putting too much pressure on it too. So again, I'm glad it happened now. where I can be worried about my craft with each book and not, oh my God, I need as many book deals as I can get as fast as I can get them to keep the money coming in, right?
Yes. I think that's
So
really good advice for sure. And whether it's like setting yourself up in that way where, you know, you're comfortable and it doesn't rely on that, or like for me, it was like downsizing everything and enjoying living in a shoebox so I could write full time. And that's my
right,
freedom. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
But I remember that feeling at one point and thinking like, years and years ago, I was like, okay, if I could just sell some books, then I can contribute financially with this. And you're right, it's such a stressful mindset and
It can
doesn't
kill your
really achieve.
creativity.
Yeah. So like for me as well, I get that. I had to find a happiness and a balance in my day to day where it was like, if that happens, that's going to be a bonus, but I'm already, because yeah, I have met people and in that stage and they're like, and I'm just like, oh honey, I've been in the query trenches for many years now.
Yes.
Like, if you're thinking that this book's going to pay off your mortgage,
Right.
and it's
Or
your
your
first
student
book,
loans or anything like
and it's
that.
often their first book when you're in that mindset, like, which
Yep.
we've all been there.
Absolutely.
Maybe you want to think of some other options.
Right.
Yeah.
It just puts too much pressure on it in an industry that I think the problem is it's always the first book where you're still learning about the industry too. But even if you make a lot of money, it takes forever you to get that money anyway. So it's not, it's like the other thing you don't know is you don't just get your big lump sum advance. That thing is like chopped up so much, right? And so it's not even the like life-saving, oh my God, it's going to pay my mortgage the first advance check. And if you're in the US, you're going to take whatever your advance check is and cut it in half because half's going to go to the government, right? So like, like it, right? And so, and it's like that, like the 2 months while I'm waiting to pay the quarterly taxes where it's just sitting nice in my savings. And I'm like, look how nice that looks. And it's all going to be gone. But it should never be the thing that you're putting that much pressure on. The industry's too slow in the way the money works. Even if you get that book deal, you're not gonna be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think you have to do it first for the love of writing a story. And that's really what the makeup test gave back to me, right? Is I just had a field day writing this thing. I can't believe my editor only cut out half the Chaucer quotes I put in it, right? Like had the best time. And it reminded me why I started doing this. And it has made everything moving forward a little bit easier because I try to go back to that joy.
That's it right there. What can you tell us a little bit about the makeup test? Because I am like frothing at the mouth for this book right here.
So it is, hold on, let me get my pitch together. It is a second chance romance, academic rivals to lovers, with a plus size main character whose story has nothing to do with her size. She's just a fat woman living in the world who ends up a rival TA with her ex from college. So they're in a PhD program in literature, and they end up rival TAs who are vying for a mentorship with their favorite professor. And as they are competing, they accidentally fall back in love.
My body is ready. That so cute, and I envision so much snark and sass.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of banter and a lot of nerdy literary stuff, and it's also a lot about, I really wanted to write a book about what it's like being in a fat body when you love yourself, but the world doesn't love you. And that's really like Allison knows she's awesome. She knows she's smart. She knows she deserves everything that she's gotten, but the world doesn't see her that way. And so I just feel really lucky that I get to add to the compendium of stories that are hopefully going to change the way people see fatness. Because it is still one of the most invisible marginalizations in the sense that the world at large doesn't see it as a marginalization because it's seen as a health problem and something that can be fixed if you just stop being lazy and eat some vegetables, right? Like that's the attitude towards it. And so I think it's a whole different struggle to get people to see fat people as human because it is seen as this thing no one wants to be, right? And so like when I use the word fat, I mean it as a descriptor, like having brown hair, not as an insult. And that is, I think, what people who want to write good fat rap want to do. They want to change what that term means.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I really like, it's interesting because a lot of the media we consume, it is, you know, it doesn't shine a light on you're just a human being.
Right.
It's like the shows that make it this oddity or whatever, and like dehumanizes.
Yeah. That there's just, they're always eating. They are funny. They're evil. They're gross. Or their story has to be about losing weight to find out. And so my story does none of those things. She never loses a pound. She never needs to lose a pound. And she gets to have, and he is also just, she jokingly calls him Ichabod Crane. So he also doesn't have like the stereotypical masculine hero, ripped bod. He's a tall string bean of a man who really loves cardigans and quaffs his hair a little too much. So like, I just really want to be able to tell love stories where bodies don't look like the bodies we think deserve love, or that the world or has told us deserves love, right? That media has told us deserves love. So I really want to write stories that challenge that.
Yes, and please keep writing those damn stories. Now
My
you
plan.
had it was a 2-book deal.
2-book deal.
Okay, so what can you tell us anything about?
On the Plus Side is the second book.
Okay.
So it's, the description's out there. I just saw a cover sketch last week and I'm so excited. So it will come out sometime in fall next year. And I'm almost finished with this round of developmental edit. So hopefully it's going to copy edit soon. But On the Plus Side leaves the world of academia. So the way my books work is same universe, but not sequels. So there are cameos from the makeup test in On the Plus Side, but the couple is somebody totally new that you haven't met. And so it's about, the main character is a woman named Everly, who is a huge fan of this show called On the Plus Side, which is like Queer Eye, but for fat people. So it's, the hosts are all fat people and the guests are all fat people. And it's just all about self-love and joy. Think Lizzo, right? Like, it's like all inspired by Lizzo, right? And so she gets nominated as a guest on the show, goes on the show and accidentally falls in love with an incredibly grumpy plaid wearing cameraman. And then they try to keep their love off camera and chaos ensues. So it's grumpy sunshine, and it's a lot about reality TV and comes at fatness from a different angle than the makeup test does. But it's been super fun to write and I'm really excited to put it out there.
You write the best tropes.
Oh,
you
thank you.
are hitting these tropes.
Love a good trope. There is nothing wrong with a trope. They work for a reason.
Amen.
100%. My gosh, that sounds glorious. I'm
so excited. I can't wait to put it out.
I don't know how you could even think that you don't have a long career in writing books, because
I hope so.
They sound not only endearing and hilarious, but also important. So
thank you.
I see our time is evaporating.
I know. This timer makes me sad.
But you know what? We just it's me and Angela. We could talk for hours and hours, and I was just like, we had to have a cutoff somewhere.
Fine. That's fine, Melanie. Fine.
I
don't know if you get this about me. I describe myself as a kind of a Muppet of a human. Like, I can just go forever.
No, I could tell if we didn't have this timer, this episode would be 5 hours long.
It would.
Absolutely.
Well, it just means we have to have you back, obviously. Well,
listen, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Yes, we would love
that. Yeah.
And yeah.
I hope you know I love you both too, and have been secretly fangirling about you both. And Angela, I think we're at the same agency, right?
Yeah,
we are. Joe Brimberg people. But I have been secretly fangirling you guys for a long time as well. So this has been wonderful for me.
It was
we enjoyed every second of having you on, and we already know you have a long ass career ahead of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Same to both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
We're doing the thing, right?
We're doing the thing. Ain't
Some
nothing
people
else.
don't even ever do the thing, which is
Yeah.
a good thing to remember too.
That's
Is
it.
not everybody even finishes a book. So just finishing a book is a huge accomplishment.
100%.
Amen.
Couple of stubborn girls here ready to take the publishing industry by storm.
Amen.
Let them say no as many times as they need.
We'll keep showing up.
Before it cuts us off, have the best night and
Thank you, you too, and have a good